Are you ever forced to read a book for English class and you end up feeling so strongly about it that you decide to write an entire essay about it because you're just extra like that? Yeah, me too. So, as you can probably tell by the title or the thumbnail or whatever you saw and drew you into today, I'm talking about a book called Every Day. Now, I don't really know how to talk about this book in a proper way. I'm putting air quotes around that because, like, what even is a proper book review? So I'm just gonna tell you now. I technically have a loose script, but it's just that it's a loose script, and honestly, I'm just here to talk about this book that I kind of no, not kinda hated. I hated this book. I did not enjoy it. I have a copy right here. You can probably hear it. I might flip through it while I'm trying to read this script, but I genuinely didn't like it. So I guess I should preface this by saying I don't like this book because I'm not even gonna lie. I'm pretty biased against this book, and I'm obviously not going to really have many good things to say about a book that I don't like. So just a warning, I am pretty biased against this. Well, it's a piece of fiction. It sure is. It sure is a piece of literature from what year is this? I think 2012. Yeah, 2012. Yeah, this is a 2012 book. Keep that in mind as we begin. So I'm gonna start by kind of trying to give a relatively short summary, but seeing that my document is like over 2,000 words and I've only got the summary written so far, yeah, this summary is not going to be very short. But like honestly, I don't even know where to start because this book is a disgrace. But I'm trying here. I'm trying. That's all we need to remember. So, anyway, continuing. So, this book is about our main character, A. Yeah, you know they're gonna be so, ooh, we're quirky. God, I can't believe I said that, but, like, you know they're gonna be like that, because they've only got one letter in their name. They say, and just a warning, I do want to warn you, A is a nice guy, although I am going to be using, they them pronouns for A specifically because they do hot bodies quite a bit and I don't want to have to like change them based on the person that they are unless I'm going to specifically be pointing something out in like a quote or something. So just letting you know that for now. So A is basically this entity that jumps from one body to another every single day. Every day, I guess you could say, like the title of the book. Yeah. So like when they go to sleep at night, in one body, then they'll wake up in a new body the next day. Which yeah, that's pretty interesting, I'd say. Now, there are two things I need to explain. Number one being these are actual people's bodies that A is just, borrowing for a day. And the next day, their memory that day is just going to be kind of funky, But there are some exceptions to this rule, and A seemingly can implant memories in these people's heads of the day. It's really weird and kind of unclear, like, the rules, but nonetheless. So, rule 2 is the person whose body they inhabit is always A's actual age. Like in this book, A is 16, I think they say. So they only hop into the bodies of other 16-year-olds, which honestly, I feel like the always the same age thing makes room for just a bunch of missed opportunities for there to be like bigger jumps in who A is. Like one day they're 5 with a loving family, the next they could be 80 and like in a nursing home or something, and the next they could be a 40-year-old going through their midlife crisis. But no, this is a 2010s romance novel. So what am I even talking about? Trying to make this plot interesting. No. We can't do that. So as for the actual plot, basically one day, A wakes up in the body of this guy named Jake. His name is not Jake, is it? It's Justin. Why did I write Jake here? I wrote Jake in my script. His name is Justin. So basically, he's dating this girl named Rhiannon. I would like to take a moment to say Rhiannon is such a miserable name to look at, read, and say. Like, I'm so sorry to any Rhiannons out there. I'm sorry that your parents were so bad at naming things, and I am so sorry that that thing had to be you. That was mean. I'm sorry. But anyway, A falls in love with her. Or, it's better to say becomes seriously obsessed with her to the point of stalking her. But we're not there yet. Basically, they take her on this date thing as Justin. I also just want to throw this bit in here for a little bit of flavor. They reference Diana Ross, the Diana Ross song specifically that everyone's obsessed with, Running Up That Hill. Hear that, kids? Every Day Did It First, before Stranger Things, and so much worse. But here's the quote. Please prepare yourself for the sheer amount of cringe that you're about to experience, because I am kind and I will warn you for this. And I'm not gonna sing it. And if I only could, I'd make a deal with God. Now Rhiannon goes from surprised to suspicious. Justin never sings along. What's gotten into you? She asks. Music, I tell her. Ha. No, really. She looks at me for a long time, then she smiles. So number one, that was painful. I'm in physical agony. Please, get rid of me, please, I beg. Number two, can we just admire how beautifully bland their conversation is? And it's not even just this scene. The conversation throughout this book just feels so unnatural and clunky. Like, it does not feel like two human beings interacting with each other, which I guess A isn't really a human being, but still, it just feels so awkward. And A is always like, oh, I can read people like a book, I can act like them perfectly in that fake deep way. And no, your conversations all sound like absolute garbage. And it's meant to feel cute, but it mostly just feels boring and forced. Like, it's really annoying. So here's another one of their riveting conversations. Let's go somewhere, I say. I'm gonna try and voice act. Voice act. Where do you want to go? I'm close enough now to see that her eyes are blue. I'm close enough to see that nobody ever gets close enough to see how blue her eyes are. I don't know, she replies. I take her hand. Come on, I tell her. Yeah. Wow, I feel like I have never read a less romantic scene in my life. Like, I've seen the YouTube comment section do better than this. Like, the YouTube comment section of classical playlists. Yes, I do like those quite a bit. I've seen them do better than whatever the heck this was. Like, you know what? I'll prove it. I genuinely actually, went to look for a YouTube comment with a good description for this, because, yeah, I'm gonna read this out for you. His eyes are light. If you don't look close enough, you'd think them white, but this close you can tell they're blue. They hold a light to them, one that glints with an intent unknown to me quite yet. It makes me smile, that light. It lets me know that he is still himself. Like, that's more interesting, right? Than the bland description of her eyes. And I would just like to say Rhiannon is, of course, the very stereotypical blonde hair, blue-eyed white girl protagonist, love interest. That is a problem in Everyday, and I'm going a little off script here, but nonetheless, Everyday, a problem with it that I'm going to address again, I swear, is the fact that A never really deals with any of the issues that come with the body that they are in. And the way I mean this is, they jump into the body of LGBT people, which I definitely think that this book was woke when it came out. It is not anymore. Oh Lord, it is not anymore. And it's bad. 'Cause, we never see anybody of, okay, we see one singular person, I think, one person of, a lower social class in the book. It's this girl, who's apparently, which, this is really weird, the book is really weird for this, but she's an illegal immigrant from Mexico. She can't speak any English and she works as a housemaid. Yeah. Now, I am not personally wanting to touch on that specifically because, yeah. So anyway, continuing on, as for back to the descriptions for a minute, I want you to tell me which of those you thought were more interesting. You can go back and listen to them again if you want to, but if you say the first one, it's okay to be wrong, but really in all seriousness, this book's descriptions are extremely boring and bland, and it's one of the major problems of the book, how boring it is to read. Like, it is numbingly boring to read. Like, I could open up to a section and I guarantee you that it's still just gonna be boring. Like, it's so boring. And then there's a lot of exposition, by the way. It's not fun. So now I am personally working on my descriptions a little bit as a writer, but even my descriptions are better than this. And like, I'm not a fantastic writer yet, but like, I don't even have to pick out lines. Like, every time I read, like, a line from this book to you, like, which involves description, which I will eventually, it reads like it'll read like my middle school attempts at writing descriptively. Yes, because unlike most people think, I am not a middle schooler. Please, I'm not like a toddler. Anyway, continuing to the actual plot of the book, because seriously, I swear I've got a script and I'm still somehow trailing off, because, yeah, that's about right. So basically, after A wakes up the next day in this new body, they're still obsessed. And again, I say obsessed and not in love because it's one-sided for pretty much the majority of this book, since Rhiannon, I can't get over that, literally has a boyfriend, that being Justin, obviously. And, you know, Justin is shown as not being, like, the greatest boyfriend, but he's not really said to be, like, actively, like, abusive or anything, just anything like that. Just kind of not there, just kind of emotionally unavailable. But other than that, he's not, like, shown as being, like, atrociously terrible. He's just kind of shown as being, like, a pretty normal dude, from what I can tell. But, you know, but basically after that first interaction, A pretends to be a couple of different people to get close to Rhiannon. Gross. I know, like legit stalks her via other people. How A is staying in the same area of bodies, even though there are like thousands and thousands of 16-year-olds across the globe, it's kind of unclear. I don't know. But basically, at one point, I do have to mention this dude, I swear. He inhabits the body of this guy named Nathan. So, Nathan is important to this story, kind of. He's just kind of a nuisance, and I say nuisance and not like a threat, because he's not a threat in this story. He's just a nuisance. He's an annoying little bug that's kind of just there, like, emailing A and being like, you're the devil, and I'll explain why. So basically, A is continuing to be obsessed with Rhiannon and goes to this party she's meant to be at, even though he has to lie to Nathan, the body he's inhabiting, Nathan's parents, and a bunch of other junk to get there. Like, seriously, this dude, like, could majorly jack up Nathan's life. And while at this party, tells Rhiannon that, number one, he's some random dude's cousin, which isn't true and easily can just be disproven if anybody asks that dude about his cousin. And number two, that he's gay, and he does this to try and make Rhiannon willing to dance with him, which, wow, way to put this random dude in danger of hate crimes or getting kicked out of his religious parents' house if anybody tells them about this. So basically, the party gets found out and they scatter, and I'm continuing to be violently annoyed. A starts driving home, but then, like the idiot they are, ends up getting outed from Nathan's body while on the highway at midnight. So yeah, this ends up having major repercussions, with Nathan thinking he got possessed by the devil, and basically being a minor inconvenience for the rest of the book. Seriously, he really doesn't do too much, but he's there, I guess. You're trying, Nathan, and I give you props for that. After After that, at one point, A tells Rhiannon who they are. She doesn't believe A, but then eventually does. A proceeds to be a stereotypical nice guy for the rest of the book. No, I am not joking. While being painfully fake deep, that so much so that it physically hurts me to read. Nathan continues to call him the devil via emails because A forgot to close the email account on Nathan's computer or something. Because A has an email account. That's how they kind of keep in touch with Rhiannon. And yeah. Basically, they keep trying to sway Rhiannon into being in love with them. Eventually, Rhiannon does kind of start liking A back at one point, and they end up... This is a little uncomfortable, but they end up kind of, sort of hooking up. Yeah. So, this is a point I want to touch on, because this scene was just oddly violating to read, and I'm going to touch on it again later when talking about A's character with actual quotes. But, basically, A is in the body of this guy I legit can't even remember the name of, so we're going to call him Tom for now. Well, while in Tom's body, A goes to this cabin Rhiannon borrowed from her uncle, because she just had that, I guess, and they have a date day together of sorts, and it's supposed to be like a 2-day thing, but it ends up only being a 1-day thing for things I'll tell you, and eventually they, hook up. Now, A does mention that they don't go all the way, whatever but they're still completely undressed at this point, and being, not very safe for work. And A did back out because they are like, oh, hey, this is somebody else's body, but it's still pretty disturbing that they let it go as far as it did, because, again, this is some random person's body that A is inhabiting that they just kind of undressed, and, it's really gross, and it's a scene that I did not enjoy reading, because it just felt disturbing and just violating for this random guy who, doesn't even know about this, and I don't know, it feels really weird. Now, like I said, this was meant to be a 2-day thing, where Rhiannon planned to borrow the cabin for 2 days, but on the second day, A ends up in the body of a girl, I can't remember her name, and, just a little bit of a warning, this is a little bit morbid. A ends up in the body of a girl who accidentally killed her brother while drunk. Yeah, you heard exactly what I just said. She killed her brother while drunk, and her parents obviously grounded her, and the police are involved and all that. Now, during this, I feel like in the book, this would have been a great time for A to touch on morality or something about, truly getting to know people before they die or something like that. You think that's what would happen with, the plot being what it is. But, nope. A is literally just thinking about Rhiannon the entire time and just how much they want to see Rhiannon. And the next day when they see Rhiannon, she's absolutely enraged that A wasn't there, even though they explain why. When I tell y'all, my brain literally stopped working at this point. So, after that, the rest of the book, A is just being obsessed while Rhiannon is like, well, actually, I don't know if I like you. And in the end, they just kind of decide to break it off, which, honestly, they're both toxic, and they kind of both deserve each other, but, I don't know. So, A begrudgingly does so, but still kind of stalks Rhiannon some more before deciding to just be depressed about it. Now, for about 0.2 seconds, the book speeds up when A finally tells Nathan, the guy from earlier, who thought the book I'm starting that over again. Basically, A tells Nathan, who throughout the book has been harassing A about thinking they're the devil, until A is like, no, I'm not the devil, I just swap bodies every day, and so blah, 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 blah. They end up meeting up, and A proves that they swap bodies every day, and Nathan invites them over to his house for a friendly little chat, because it's just like, oh yeah, I totally believe you, you're totally not the devil. Someone I completely forgot to mention up until this point is Reverend Poole. I think I'm saying that name right. Basically, this priest dude or whatever, I don't know religious stuff, so that could be very wrong, so I'm sorry if I'm wrong. correct me in the comments, I guess, who's been basically encouraging Nathan throughout the book to spreading the devil rumor thing. The reason I didn't mention him is because he's been honestly kind of irrelevant, just like Nathan up until now. Like I said, they're honestly a quite minor nuisance. Like, A says that, oh, he couldn't reveal my secret, but literally Nathan can't. Like, how are you supposed to say, oh yeah, I got possessed by this dude who hops bodies everywhere? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So A goes to Nathan's house, and surprise, surprise, he lied. Basically, Reverend Poole is there to, like, exorcise him or something. I don't really know. But Poole reveals that he's actually some kind of body hopper like A, and then he's basically like, ooh, you might actually be the devil. I don't know. Honestly, it genuinely made no sense to me, and it's barely even a chapter. So, yeah, trust me, if that part of the summary made no sense, it's because in the book, it makes no sense. Like, it genuinely, I didn't understand it when I read it, and I honestly don't think I understand it now. Alright, folks, final stretch. Basically, A ends up inhabiting the body of this absolute sweetheart, and I mean absolute sweetheart, named Alexander. And when I tell you this guy is an angel, I mean it. He bakes cookies for his parents' anniversary, helps people with their bands just because he wants to, does well in school, writes down song lyrics that he thinks are meaningful and gives them to people he cares about, and just all these other really sweet things. I would also like to mention, I actually do the song lyric thing too. It was actually kind of funny to see that. It was fun. It was a fun little thing. But nonetheless, Alexander is shown as an absolutely fantastic person, and, I'm just gonna present this quote that A gives about him. The more I see in Alexander, the more the world reflects back at him, the more of a possibility he seems. His possibility is grounded in the things that mean most to me: kindness, creativity, engagement in the world. Basically, he's just the nicest person ever, and you know what A does? You know what this guy genuinely says? He's a whole lot like me. Yeah, A, who stalked a girl, ruined multiple people's lives because of their obsession with Rhiannon, and is overall really selfish and self-centered throughout the book, thinking about himself even when they're at a funeral. Yep, just like Alexander, who stays up too late at night to get all of his schoolwork done just so his parents don't have to worry about him. Who multiple people are, it's said, come to him for advice because he's so kind and considerate and so selfless. Yeah, and A is like, hey, this guy is so much like me that I'm gonna set him up with Rhiannon, even though it's very much so hinted that Alexander already had something going on with one of his friends, so that was really weird. But yeah, basically, A is like, yeah, I'm going to set this super sweet dude up with Rhiannon. The girl who cheated on her boyfriend with you, A, is actively transphobic. That's something I'll get into eventually, and is just overall a really rude person. Yeah, A decides to set them up. Long story short, A makes Alexander remember this date thing that they do with Rhiannon, and basically, did I call her Rihanna? I might have. But basically leaves Rhiannon to be with Alexander, being like, oh, this person is so much like me, so you should have no problem falling in love with him. Which, A, that's not really how human emotions work, but whatever. And so basically, yeah, Alexander is left with Rhiannon, which honestly he shouldn't be. Lord, Alexander, get out of there. Run so quickly. But yeah, so it was just so weird. If that made no sense to you, it's because it doesn't make sense, quite frankly. So yeah, that is the plot. You hate it? Me too. And I had to read the whole thing and write, like, multiple things for it for English class. I had to compare it to Romeo and Juliet. I did not have fun with Romeo and Juliet. It was so boring. Anyway, I'm gonna take a real quick break, and by that I mean I need to go write the rest of the script. Okay, so I'm back. Before we jump into the specific groups, and groups and gripes and all that I have with A and, possibly Rhiannon, I think I'm probably gonna do something on Rhiannon, as people, I first want to talk about how this book just kind of failed as a book. So for starters, obviously, since A is the main character, I do have to talk about them a little bit. A is very much so a fake, deep kind of character, which led to very irritating narration throughout the entire book, where, you know, they very much so think that, oh, just glancing at someone's memories, they can tell the person, all of the person who they're possessing. They know everything about them and their whole story and who they are as a person. They also like act this way towards people whose bodies they don't inhibit. Just like they think by just like looking at Rhiannon, they immediately know everything about her, all of who she is as a person, which, maybe if this was a better written book, A could have been portrayed as possibly thinking that they know people on a deep level, but they actually don't, and have that end up causing them to overlook Rhiannon's flaws. But no, this is a book from 2012, so that is not what we got. So this book does have some pretty decent quotes from it, but that's only really when you separate them from the actual original material of the book, I guess you could say. Only if you're not reading it alongside the actual plot, if that makes any sense. The quotes sound good out of context, basically. The quotes sound great out of context. They sound very meaningful and all that. But then you read them in context, and it usually just ends up being a complaining about being at somebody's birthday or something. Or about how they really want to be with Rhiannon while literally at a funeral. Fun fact, that actually is something that happens in this book. I bet you can believe it. Honestly, after that summary, I think you probably believe it. So yeah, a lot of the quotes about loneliness and apathy are interesting, but like I said, only when you separate them from A, who's usually just complaining. And it's just it's really frustrating. There's this one quote, and I want to know if I can find it, because I did enjoy it. Oh yeah, okay, here it is. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it in the book, but I can find it in some of my notes, and it's: kindness connects to who you are, while niceness connects to how you want to be seen. They say this about Rhiannon, and well, again, I have some personal gripes with Rhiannon. I'm really not her biggest fan. I do generally like that quote. I do find it interesting because I definitely am of the opinion that there is a difference between kindness and niceness, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. So the book's descriptions, as I've mentioned, are quite bland, and often made me personally feel like it was just two heads floating in a talking room, and pretty monotoned heads as well, because the dialogue is a whole other problem, because it tends to be extremely clunky and is almost always just to further the plot, but only in that really boring, droning way, where it just feels like the characters are going through the motions, if that makes any sense. It just feels very bland and very boring. One example of dialogue that is clearly supposed to be emotional can be seen just in the first chapter. I'm opening up to it. So this is after their A kind of realized, oh hey, this isn't how Justin acts, so I gotta call Rhiannon and basically tell her that this is Justin's not gonna be acting like this. So I'm gonna read this out to you. It's a little bit longer, so buckle in for this one. I realize I have to call her. Her number's right there in his phone. I can't let her think tomorrow's going to be like today. Hey, she answers. Hey, I say. Thank you again for today. Also, their speaking just seems so formal, not like teenagers. I don't know. Maybe teenagers talk different in the 2012s, but I don't know. It just feels weird. Anyway, continuing. I don't want to do this. I don't want to ruin it. But I have to, don't I? I continue. But about today. Are you going to tell me that we can't cut class every day? That's not like you. Not like me. Yeah, I say. But, I don't want you to think that every day is going to be like today, because they're not going to be, all right? They can't be. There's a silence. She knows something's wrong. I know that, she says carefully. But maybe things can still be better. I know they can be. I don't know, I tell her. That's all I wanted to say. I don't know. Today was something, but it's not like everything. I know that. Okay. I sigh. So I guess, no, I guess I'll keep reading this. There's always a chance that in some way I will have brushed off Justin. There's always a chance that his life will in fact change, that he will change, but I have no way of knowing. It's rare that I get to see a body after I've left it, and even then it's usually just months or years later, if I recognize it at all. I want Justin to be better to her, but I can't have her expecting it. That's all, I tell her. It feels like a Justin thing to say. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, you will. Thanks again for today. No matter what trouble we get into tomorrow for it, it was worth it. Yeah. I love you, she says. And I want to say it. I want to say I love you too. Right now, at this moment. Every part of me would mean it. But that will only last for a couple more hours. Sleep well, I tell her. Then I hang up. Do you get what I mean when I say it feels soulless? Like, maybe I'm just misinterpreting it. Maybe I'm just reading it differently than other people. But that's just the way I feel about it personally. Like, it all feels so boring. Like, the word say is very much so overused. Like, I understand. Sometimes, say is the best word to use. Like, I use it, right? But when you're writing dialogue, it's okay to add in some kind of fluctuation, I guess. Otherwise, your writing is just going to feel very bland and flat like this. And when I say it feels like a floating head, you understand what I mean with this. And while it is technically a phone call, there are ways to make it feel more like somebody on the phone than just talking at each other. And I say at each other, not with each other, because it just feels so boring. It feels like two walls, And like, it just, yeah. Also, the whole, right now, at this moment, every part of me would mean the I love you thing. A has known Rhiannon for a couple of hours. You kind of get what I say when I say that, they get obsessed a little quickly. Yeah. So, getting back on script, yeah, it just feels very flat. Also, oh boy. Throughout the story, the author violently avoids more exciting plots with Nathan and the Reverend. There are a million ways brought up in the story for the author to shift focus, even just for a little bit. Just pay a little more attention to Nathan's accusations of being the devil, or just generally more exciting stuff is it's sampled, right? But instead, at every turn, the author just shifts back to Rhiannon. I think I keep calling her Rihanna or something, but Rhiannon. I seriously think that the author just wanted to write a regular romance novel or something like that, but was forced to keep up with the paranormal trend going on at the time, but was left with a utterly unexplored and very haphazardly constructed, I'm gonna call it a magical system, because it is hinted that there are other people like A, but, I'm gonna call it a magic system. I'm gonna call it a magic system because I legit do not know what else to call it. But it's so poorly constructed because it makes the bare minimum amount of sense. And just give you a taste of some of this dodging that the author does. I'm gonna read more of this to you. More of my lovely, lovely voice droning on with this very exciting story. So basically, this is the scene where A goes in to Nathan's house and ends up meeting Reverend Poole, and I'm just gonna read, what I think is important. So might I add, this is literally what I think is 10 or less pages away from the end of the book. Yeah, wait, you know what, I'm gonna check right now, as we speak, how many pages are left after this. I wanna know. Oh, I'm wrong. I think it might be like 20 pages. There's like 30 pages after this. But yeah, that's not very many. So anyway, I'm gonna read it. I don't know what he, Reverend Poole, is saying. I don't want to know what he's saying. Look at me, he commands. I do. I look into those eyes and I know what he's saying. The amazing thing, he tells me, is that you still haven't learned how to make it last longer than a single day. You have no idea the power you possess. I back away from him. You're not Reverend Poole, I say, unable to keep the shaking out of Ainsley's voice. Ainsley is the body they're possessing at the time. I am today. I was yesterday. Tomorrow, who knows? I have to judge what best suits me. I wasn't going to miss this. He is taking me beyond another window, but right away I know that I don't like what's there. There are better ways to live your life, he continues. I can show you. There's a recognition in his eyes, but there's also a menace and something else. An entreaty? I think I said that right. Almost as if Reverend Poole is still inside somewhere trying to warn me. Get off me, I say, standing up. He seems amused. I'm not touching you. I'm sitting here having a conversation. Get off me, I say louder, and start ripping at my own shirt, sending the buttons flying. What? Get off me, I scream, and that scream is a sob, and the sob is a cry for help, and just as I'd hoped, Nathan hears it. Nathan has been listening, and the door to the living room is flung open, and there he is, just in time to see me screaming and crying, my shirt ripped open, Poole standing now with murder in his eyes. I'm betting everything on the common decency I saw in Nathan, back when I was inside him, and... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That threw me off. And even though he is clearly terrified, the common decency does rise, because instead of running away or closing the door or listening to what Poole has to say, Nathan yells, "What are you doing?" And he holds the door open for me as I flee, and he blocks the Reverend, or whoever he is inside, from catching me, and I run out the front door and into my car. Nathan summons the strength to hold Poole back, buying me those crucial seconds, so by the time Poole is on the lawn, my key is already in the ignition. There's no point in running away, Poole yells. You're only going to want to find me later, and all the others. Trembling, I turn up the radio, drowning him out with the sound of the song and the sound of me driving away. Now, that was actually one of the more impressive moments in the book, and I do like the writing in that section because I think David Leviathan. I think it's very funny that he wrote this story where, A might be the devil and his last name is Leviathan. I just think that's funny. I just think that's funny. But that's just me. Like Leviathan, really? I don't know. Sorry. That's just me. But, seriously, I feel like this book could have done so much better as that more action-y story with maybe some romance on the side. But no. It's not. But yeah, that seems interesting, doesn't it? Yeah, well, it's the only point in time in the book where we ever really get anything like that. That I think is the highest point of the book after a severe low. Like, and the thing is, this book isn't even like so bad that it's good. It's in that terrible little field I like to call the mediocre valley. It's just so bad that it's not even like funny bad. It's just a bad book, it's disappointing, and it honestly is just so haphazardly constructed, and I feel like it definitely could have been something more, but then it just failed to be that, by trying to be the paranormal romance that it honestly shouldn't have tried to be. Now, before I get into the next section involving the characters, I really want to mention the fact that I definitely think that this book was probably considered very woke when it first came out. I know that purely because there's, like, a single gay person in it. But seriously, Aya's definitely seems to be some sort of gender fluid or non-binary, because they do mention, feeling like not liking being in, like, some days really enjoying being in girl like a girl or a guy body, well, the next day they might not want to be in a girl or guy's body, right? And it's a whole thing. And they are canonically pansexual, not really caring about the gender of the people they like, more of looking at the person themselves. So that is canon, and that's kind of cool. But then the book is also really riddled with gay stereotypes, the misgendering of trans people, and a complete lack of social and economic diversity when it comes to the bodies that A is possessing, because A only possesses the bodies of pretty much all upper middle class people. Now, there is some diversity when it comes to, like, ethnicities and stuff like that, but they never, ever touch on how different it might be to be in a straight white guy's body, instead of like a black girl's body, like right. They don't really touch on how maybe the worldview might have to be changed for that, and I feel like that's definitely something that should have been touched on in a book like this, but it wasn't. So yeah, it's a very bare bones look at what swapping bodies may do to a person, and honestly, I really think a better job could have been done. Oh, Rhiannon. Still not used to the name. So, before we get into A, I do want to talk a little bit about Rhiannon, because I really don't like her. In fact, I think I might even like her less than A, which isn't her fault, it's the author's, but still, I really cannot stand how her entire character is handled. Now, I think she could have been interesting. A girl in love with someone who changes bodies every day and is wrestling with her want for stability while also wanting to follow her heart. That's a very interesting story and makes possibilities for a very interesting dynamic. But no, instead she's the girl who gets mad when A happens to be in a body she doesn't like, gets upset when people unsurprisingly got mad when she got caught cheating on her boyfriend, and overall is just pretty mean throughout the book to, like, a plethora of people, and honestly, she's really just not very pleasant. Like, it is stated that she comes from or not stated, but it is insinuated she comes from a not great home, which, is understandable, but they really do not truly go into what Rhiannon's story is. But, yeah, so I do think, in my opinion, I think Rhiannon was meant to be a Manic Pixie Dream Girl type, where, she loves the beach, and, she's not like the other girls, and, like, I do think that she was probably supposed to be a little bit more of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl type, but she ended up just kind of coming off like she's always trying to pick a fight, or just really isn't satisfied with pretty much anything. Also on top of that, she's pretty transphobic and not very friendly to non-attractive people that A ends up in the bodies of. So that's a decision. Honestly, I really don't want to talk about her for too long, because she frustrates me, and honestly, I don't necessarily want to continuously talk about a character who frustrates me. Although I guess this is kind of the point of the video. But yeah, I do want to highlight, honestly, a specific scene, I suppose. I say lines, but I feel like it's kind of the whole scene about how crummy she can kind of be, and yeah, I want to note before we begin that this all happens within the span of, I think, like 2 pages. So, beginning. Blah blah blah. I can't say Justin seems that upset, she says. This was after Justin learned that she was cheating on him with A. Like, they'd already nearly slept together. They just didn't go all the way, like I said earlier. I don't want to say that too many times because I don't want to get, like, buried by the YouTube algorithm. But, like, yeah, like, this is her discussing the fact that she cheated on her boyfriend. Like, she did. So, continuing. And there's no shortage of girls who want to comfort him. It's pathetic. Rebecca's been awesome. I swear, there should be an occupation called friend PR. Rebecca would ace that. She's getting my half of the story out there. Girl, your half of the story is you cheating on your boyfriend. Like, what? Which is that Justin's a jerk, and that the metalhead and I weren't doing anything besides talking. Basically, A was in the body of this metalhead guy, and he ends up going to Rhiannon, and they hug, and, well, technically, I wouldn't consider the hug cheating. I would consider them making out and nearly sleeping together cheating, but we're not going to talk about that, I guess. Because, of course, the recording cut off. Oopsie. Continuing. The first part is irrefutable, but even to me, the second part sounds weak. Yeah, see, even A is like, but you did cheat on your boyfriend. like, even A is out here like, no, you did. Which is kind of funny to me, but, continuing. I'm sorry it had to all go down like that, I say. It could have been worse, and we have to stop apologizing to each other. Every sentence can't start with, I'm sorry. I mean, she could apologize for quite a few things, but we're not going to talk about that. There's such a resignation in her voice, but I can't tell what she's actually resigned herself to. So this comes out, might I add, this next line, I am not skipping anything. This just randomly comes out of nowhere, and it's just, so you're a girl who's pretending to be a boy? She says, I guess, but not really. It's more complicated than that. I sense she doesn't want to get into it. And how far did you drive? 3 hours? And what are you missing? A couple of tests, a date with my girlfriend. Do you think that's fair? Now, I'd like to add, this would be a very interesting scene of her being like, oh, you're missing a date with somebody's girlfriend. But the fact is, Rhiannon's gotten mad at A for missing time with her so that he could go on dates with other people's, significant others for them, or staying home because of familial stuff. And Rhiannon's gotten mad at A for that. So it's unsurprising that they would not go and do that. And this scene really doesn't make sense in context because Rhiannon has gotten mad at A before for not spending time with her. And now she's getting mad at them for spending time with her. It really doesn't make sense. But continuing. I'm stuck for a second. Again, see, A is confused. What do you mean? I ask. Look, Rhiannon says, I'm happy you've come all this way. I really am. But I didn't get much sleep last night, and I'm cranky as hell. And this morning when I got your email, I just thought, is this all really fair? Not to me or to you, but to these people whose lives you're kidnapping. Again, before this, Rhiannon had multiple times gotten mad at A for not showing up because of events in these people's lives. And now she's completely backtracking on that, which doesn't make sense. Continuing. Rhiannon, I'm always careful. I know you are. And I know it's just a day, but what if something completely unexpected was supposed to happen? What if her girlfriend is planning this huge surprise party for her? What if her lab partner is going to fail out of class if she's not there to help? What if, I don't know, what if there's a huge accident she's supposed to be nearby to pull a baby to safety? So yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this, but currently, A is in the body of a trans guy. A trans guy. And the second that she learns, because there is an earlier page, and I don't want to go looking for it, but where she's basically like, you look different today, and A is just like, oh yeah, I'm body of a trans guy, and she's just like, noted as like, looking like weird, giving him like a weird look, and it's just like, that's a choice. I don't know why the author intentionally made a choice like that. I don't know. It was a choice. It was a choice. But, yeah, but that's what I really wanted to read. And it's just very interesting, how they handle that. Another thing I want to add here is Rhiannon's constant insistence, throughout the book that she really cares about A whole lot, and they're super important to her, and she only wants the best for them, when in reality, she's constantly putting down A's emotions and not even really considering the fact that maybe A didn't show up for something because of the body they're in, but then all of a sudden getting mad when they do show up, disregarding something about the body they're in. Like, nothing is satisfying for her. And, while I personally am not A's biggest fan, I don't think that this is fair to them. And honestly, I don't really think they deserve all the shit that Rhiannon continuously gives them, because, A is trying, and, well, they're kind of a stalker, and that's a whole other thing. I have very mixed emotions about it. Yeah. So, now, lastly, at the end of the book, Rhiannon is set up with this guy named Alexander, as I said in the summary. And honestly, I honestly don't think they're going to stay together very long. Because Alexander, in the book, one of the characteristics that, some of the characteristic A also notes that Alexander values is kindness, trust, and loyalty. And stuff like that. And so Rhiannon cheated on her last boyfriend. And so if Alexander learned something like that, I honestly wouldn't be too surprised if he's like, hey, I really don't like that. And, I really don't think that it is very fair to him. And for A to set this very kind, very very nice person that is Alexander up with Rhiannon, who has a ways to go before she is a good person. I think that it wasn't really a fantastic choice, and I just am not really a fan of what they did with her character, especially in the end. And it's kind of weird how A did do the whole, like, oh, hey, get over me, date this other random guy who she doesn't know, which was kind of weird. It was a choice, but it's fine, I guess. But yeah, honestly, I think Rhiannon really needs to work on herself, and actually become a decent person before she really clambers into another relationship. Because, I really don't think that she's the perfect, lovely person that the author really wants her to be. So, yeah, that's Rhiannon. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed guests, it's the moment you've maybe all been waiting for, I don't know. A. Dear old interesting A. I have opinions. Most of them aren't good. I kind of hate them, if I'm being completely honest, because A is not a good person. I don't think necessarily that they are a bad person, but they are not a good person. They are a self-centered stalker who really doesn't reconsider the repercussions of their actions when it comes to being with Rhiannon. We're constantly told throughout the book that A tries to keep people's lives mostly the same, but this is continuously contradicted when they do things that, like, are like I said, completely contradicting this. Constantly sneaking out, going to do things with Rhiannon and telling people things that could most definitely change the course of people's lives. I mean, for God's sake, not only do they, completely F up Nathan's life, I mean, as you probably remember from the summary, they also probably get a boy named George grounded, and they almost make a boy miss his sister's wedding, all for Rhiannon. So yeah. So yeah, And that's just honestly kind of the tip of the iceberg. So throughout the story, A is very fake deep, is the only way that I can really put it, if I'm being honest. Because I did say earlier that there are some quotes that I do like from this book. But the problem is, they don't actually work because they're being said by A, who thinks that they understand humanity on this deep fundamental level because they swap bodies every day. But in reality, they really end up just sounding like some guy thinking that they know everything, when in reality, they've only ever lived one day as a person. And they can't actually, you can't understand a person via one day in their life. A person is a system of memories and happenstance and different things that have gone on throughout their life. So I really do not think that one day can encapsulate a person in their entirety. And acting like one day is enough to understand somebody entirely doesn't make sense. And now, it isn't just the person that they are acting like, the person that they are being for the day, that they think they understand in their entirety. They also act like they understand everybody around the person that they are in the body of. And that's just really frustrating because, no, you don't understand what everybody's feeling at every moment just because you've looked at them and you think that. Because everybody is a different person and they react to things differently. And it's a really frustrating narrative that is being spun where they're like, no, clearly A is the pinnacle of human understanding because they hop around bodies. And it's really frustrating. And it also kind of feeds into how selfish I find A to be. Because, oh my lord, they can be an inconsiderate asshole. Like I said earlier, they made a boy possibly miss his sister's wedding. And they started crying about their own life at somebody else's grandpa's funeral. Basically being like, woe is me. My life sucks. Like I said, at someone else's funeral. And again, that's not even mentioning what they did to Nathan, who is probably going to need therapy. Like, after everything that has gone on throughout the story, I would not be surprised if Nathan needs some goddamn therapy. Like, seriously, is Nathan okay? Because I really don't think so. And like I said, I don't think that A is a good person. But they're also not completely terrible. They're just really not as good as they think they are. And I feel as if that is also very much so showcased in their entire relationship with Rhiannon. So this next part, I do not really have any sort of script for, because I was, number one, getting tired of writing, because seriously, guys, when I tell you that this has a word count of in the 4,000s, I mean it. That's a whole lot of words, so I didn't want to write more, but I also really wanted to give my very straight, unfiltered opinion, because this next part is something that frustrated me a lot in the book, and that is A's relationship, or what I prefer to call A's obsession with Rhiannon. So, the whole point of this book is that it is a romance. It is a early 2000s, 2010s romance novel. I understood that going into it because, again, this was for, basically, it was this Romeo and Juliet unit, I guess is the only way that I could say it, because basically we were having to read books that were relatively similar to Romeo and Juliet. But the thing is, this book was not similar to Romeo and Juliet, because the only thing star-crossed about Rhiannon and A is the fact that they change bodies every day. But A is obsessed with Rhiannon, and I do mean obsessed, and like, they actively stalked her. When I say that, I mean, basically, they ended up in the body of this girl, right? And they're like, oh, I really want to see Rhiannon. So they skipped school, went to Rhiannon's school, which, like, I don't really understand how some random girl was able to just, like, waltz into a school, but that's a whole other story. There are a lot of plot holes with A just being allowed to waltz into schools that they don't go to. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Although, maybe, the book takes place relatively close to the state that I live in, so I'm assuming the rules are at least somewhat similar. So it really didn't make any sense. It really didn't make any sense. And so basically, yeah, they literally sneak into the school, lie to Rhiannon and say, oh yeah, hey, I might be moving here. Would you mind showing me around the place? And then basically just kind of like frothing at the mouth over Rhiannon for the entire day. And then they just continuously kind of just pop into her life via these different people. And again, there was the whole Nathan situation where he full-on lied and made up this character to try and get close to Rhiannon, which is just really weird in its own right and is kind of uncomfortable, and I really just, I don't like it. Now, when A did tell Rhiannon, obviously she was like, no, that's not true, and they're like, no, it is, and she did come to accept that pretty quickly. And honestly, as much as I don't like Rhiannon, I genuinely do not understand how, when she learned that A was apparently, like, a bunch of the people that she had met recently, how she wasn't immediately like, ew, why are you following me around? That's kind of weird. But no, that's romantic, which, that's red flags from both of these people. Honestly, both of these people are walking red flags. Seriously. Oh my god. But continuing on from that, I feel like I have so much to say about A, while also feeling like I really can only sum it up by saying they were an obsessive stalker. Actually, you know what? Give me a second to find a reference page, and I will, because, like, I really do not like the way that A kind of handles their feelings for Rhiannon. It just feels very creepy and just very uncomfortable. Okay, so this is pretty much one, like, so I'm gonna read the last thing in the first chapter and the first thing in the second chapter, just to kind of show you. This was A after a couple hours of knowing Rhiannon. Yeah, this is hard for me. I've gotten used to what I am and how my life works. I've never wanted to stay. I'm always ready to leave. But not tonight. Tonight I'm haunted by the fact tomorrow he'll be here and I won't be. I want to stay. I pray to stay. I close my eyes and wish to stay. For her. Like, really? Seriously? Like, that's just... Like, really? This is the first time you've ever wanted to stay just because of a random girl. Okay. That's fine. I wake up thinking of yesterday. The joy is in remembering. The pain is in knowing it was yesterday. I'm sorry, I can't say this with a straight face. I'm not there. I'm not in Justin's bed, which... I'm sorry. Yeah. So reading some of these lines are very, very fun. But, yeah, I would also like to add this. So, out of everything I just described, with, and throughout the book, I bet I could open up and just immediately I could open up, and I'm sure that I could have open up to them just absolutely just prosing about how much they absolutely adore and love Rhiannon, again, very obsessively. Like, it's very creepy. Because you want to know what? How many days did A know Rhiannon for? Again, they were obsessed with her. 41 days. 41 days. All of these problems that they cause are within the span of not even 2 months. Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty nicely. Honestly, I don't really think that that's about all I have to say about A, because honestly, I don't like them as a character. Or, well, I think they could work, is the thing. You could use them as an unreliable narrator. If they really pushed the fact that A was obsessive, if they really highlighted the fact that A was an unreliable narrator by really pushing the fact that they think they know people but they don't. No, the book encourages you to think that A does know what they're talking about when they don't. And I feel like this book could have worked if they were portrayed as an unreliable narrator. There are ways this book could have worked. There are ways this book could have been really interesting because the concept is there. The concept is good. I'm going to give that to the book because I'm not just going to completely criticize this book and say that there wasn't something there. There was. But it just really didn't follow through. And that's one of the most disappointing parts about this because it could have been something and it really wasn't. And I think that is the most disappointing thing about this. And that is our leeway into the end. So, in conclusion, this book feels disappointing more than anything. Because it could have been something. It could have been a very interesting dive into morality, into personhood, and if are you a system of memories? So even if you are a different body, are you still the same person? It could be a very interesting look into the human experience. But that's not what this was. Instead, it was mediocre at best and a honestly really annoying romance. And honestly, I think that the best way to explain this plot is with one of the quotes from this book. It would be too easy to say that I feel invisible. Instead, I feel painfully visible and entirely ignored. And I think that's how the interesting plot of this book can be summed up in a couple of words, if I'm being entirely honest. And again, this book also could have looked at how the world views different people, such as people of different social classes, ethnicities, sexualities, genders, everything. It could have explored all of that. But that is not what we got. Instead, it was riddled with stereotypes, misgendering, some interesting decisions about people of color, and it just feels haphazard at best. And it feels like it has so much potential, but it just doesn't work. And honestly, I think that's the worst part of it. Because it could have been something, and then it wasn't. And what's worse than that, you know? So, yeah. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. This was really long, I know. if you like this, I'm thinking about doing more things like it. You should like and subscribe, since this took freaking ever to put together. And when I say forever, I mean literally forever. Oh my god. This took me a couple of days, plus, however much time it took me reading the book. If you have any other suggestions of bad books that you think I'd like, I am totally open for that. And yeah, I'm honestly pretty proud of myself for getting this done. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye!